My name is Robert Metz, and I'm the author of the just published book, which is entitled Real Estate Prosperity. My book is available in both e-form and hard copy at www.realestateprosperityllc.com. In a series of podcasts, we're exploring the various methods and foundations of knowledge which are necessary and vitally useful in making substantial profits in the real estate business, whether you're flipping, speculating, looking to invest for the longer term, and or rehabbing the property. This podcast is the fourth in a series dealing with an overview of the basics of the foreclosure process and the buyer's needs, what the buyer needs to be aware of to successfully navigate and speculate, invest in foreclosure properties. In our third podcast, we're at the point of making contact with a homeowner for a property that is in foreclosure or about to go into foreclosure. We discussed the solicitation letter and making initial contact with the homeowner. So, having located a prospective deal, having made contact with the homeowner, it is time to negotiate a transaction. Again, the linchpin, buy low, buy right. Negotiating is a process. Everybody has their own style, hard-headed approach, mild-mannered, understated, hyperbole, a variety of means. My approach, my philosophy is a straightforward, gentlemanly-like, business-like situation, a scenario where you treat the homeowner with respect. Again, understanding that he is in a desperate straits, typically, he is down. You do not kick somebody when they are down. You do not demean them. Treat him with respect. Treat him as if it's a business transaction. A little bit of compassion, sincerity, and some straightforward discussions, a little bit of levity combined with the business. But do not try to hit him over the head. Do not be demeaning. The approach in dealing with the homeowner is to have the homeowner, more or less, deal with his creditors in one fashion or another to get the creditors paid off and to obtain the property on favorable terms. In most scenarios, especially in a down market where properties have just been highly leveraged and maybe overvalued, the short sale approach is the norm. Short sale meaning that a short sale is done whereby somebody takes a discount, namely the lender or lenders, in order to create an equity buffer, a cushion, between what the property is really worth, what you, the speculator, the investor, think it's worth, what you think you can get out of it or do with it, and what you're going to pay for it. Many times the property is over-collateralized, underwater, as the modern expression is, and many times it's not over-collateralized, but the debt, especially with accumulated arrearages and costs in a foreclosure scenario, the debt is roughly equal to the fair market value, or so close to fair market value, or a sensible purchase price, so that something has to be done in order to make it an attractive, sensible deal. That's namely a short sale, whereby the lender negotiates down, or whereby the owner and the buyer, the prospective buyer, you, the speculator, work typically together to try to negotiate a deal with the lender so that the lender takes a sufficiently lower price as settlement in full of its outstanding mortgage to create enough equity in the deal so that you, the buyer, have your built-in upfront equity, your potential profit margin, and there's either something in the deal for the seller or the seller can at least walk away whole. You want to deal with the lender itself, not the attorneys for the lender. The attorneys for the lender typically have very little incentive in paying any attention to a homeowner, the borrower, or to a prospective buyer in negotiating a short sale. They typically do not get paid by the hour. They get paid by the action, whether or not the property goes to sale or how far the action goes. They don't have the time, the interest, the wherewithal, the staff. They don't care to try to make a deal with a buyer and a borrower in default to discount a mortgage. Unless it's a commercial or a larger transaction where the lender wants to have the attorney participate in negotiations and it's more of a substantial business deal. But in the garden variety, one family situation or smaller commercial situation, the lender's attorney, especially where it's an institutional lender, large mortgage company or a bank, the lender's attorney will be of very little use and sometimes counterproductive in any settlement, or let's call them short sale negotiations. When you get your foreclosure lists, you're going to have the attorney's phone number, but not the lender's phone number typically. And a lot of the larger lenders are represented by third-party servicing companies. So the foreclosure complaint, the foreclosure papers, may not even have the name of the true lender who's holding the mortgage. It might be ABC Servicing Company as opposed to Chase Manhattan Bank. Or it might have the lender's name. Or there might be assignees, more than one lender who's involved. In any case, you need to dig. You need to get either through the attorney's office, the attorney for the lender, or from late notices and other notices that the borrower, your prospective seller, the owner of the property has received. You need to get the phone number for the actual lender or the servicing company for the lender. That is who you and the homeowner want to negotiate with. They have workout departments, loss mitigation departments, a variety of names, but it's basically departments that the lenders have to negotiate settlements of foreclosure actions where they're going to take a discount on the debt, a short sale. The paperwork, as I point out in my book, can sometimes be extensive, but is very straightforward. That has to be submitted on behalf of the homeowner to try to get the lender to agree to a short sale. That includes financial statements, statements of hardship, possibly income or other verifications of income and debt, and at the same time, submitting an additional appraisal, maybe a repair estimate on the property, to show the existing lender why it makes sense for them to take a discount, get out from under, not carry the property for another couple of years or so while it's in foreclosure, have more arrearages accumulate, get no interest income from the mortgage, and be in a declining, possibly a declining market, or even in an upward market, being in a diminished or declining situation with regard to the property. If the property is going up a little bit in value or staying the same, give or take, and the debt keeps increasing month after month, and the lender also has additional costs month after month to advance maybe taxes and insurance on the property, pay their legal fees and costs in connection with the foreclosure, it can sometimes be a backwards diminishing return situation for the lender, and it may make very much sense to the lender to get out from under a year, 2+ years earlier. And part of the job of a successful speculator who's looking to get the property through a short sale is to be able to bring these points out with the lender, to negotiate a short sale, to show the present value, to show repairs that may be needed, to show what the balance will be 2.5 years down the road if the foreclosure runs a full route and the lender is receiving no money and the lender does not make a deal today to get out from under. So, in negotiating a short sale, you, the buyer, along with your seller, the borrower in default, want to negotiate with the lender to get a sufficient discount on the mortgage to make the deal work. Many times a first and a second mortgage have to be discounted. If a second mortgage is to be discounted, the first mortgagee, typically the foreclosing lender, will want to see that the second mortgage is getting very little percentage-wise on its debt, because the first mortgage holder knows that if it goes to foreclosure sale, chances are the second mortgage will get wiped out and get zero. So where you're looking for the first mortgage to take a discount and also the second mortgage holder to take a discount, chances are in your negotiations you're not going to be able to offer much more than 5 or 10% to the second lien holder in order to make the deal work and to satisfy the first lien holder, because he does not want to see other than nominal token consideration going to a mortgage behind him, unless again there's tremendous equity, in which case you're not going to be doing a short sale anyway. It will be a straight sale. Sometimes there's a token discount in a short sale where there is really enough of an equity cushion to make a deal make sense, but a lien holder, a mortgage holder, will still knock a few bucks off the mortgage balance just for settlement value, a token discount, to keep everybody happy and facilitate a deal. Which leads us to the typical sale where there's a buyer who's looking to deal directly with an owner in distress, what we call the straight simple sale. In this scenario, there has to be a sufficient equity cushion in the property such that without a discount, the borrower, the seller, can sell to you, getting a price that he realizes money out of, and he just simply pays off his mortgage balance, accumulated arrears, late fees, legal costs, etc. That's a straight simple sale, and most of the most lucrative deals in buying foreclosures are where there's still a positive equity in the property, and you, the speculator, can do a straight simple sale where the seller can come out with some money in his pocket, a decent amount, and at the same time simply pay off his debt. Those are typically the most lucrative deals, and of course the easiest ones to do. Now, back to a subject that we discussed earlier in the 2 prior podcasts, buying at the sheriff's sale. We touched on some of the issues for the borrower to be concerned with and for the buyer, the bidder, to be concerned with. Elaborating on that, one has to understand that at the actual sale, there's what's sometimes called the auction mentality, where certain bidders, especially the novice bidders, tend to run the price up and in deals sometimes overpay for a property. So always beware of not getting caught up in the auction mentality of overbidding, even if it's still a decent deal, but overbidding from what you should bid on a property in foreclosure. Again, we previously discussed the risk of putting up the deposit, the 30% deposit, typically, at the sale, and the balance within a month. In addition, one big risk in buying at sale, and this has to be built in as a factor in any price, is the fact that a typical sheriff's sale will permit minimal inspection of the property by the bidder, and frequently with no access to the property, as is the case usually, no inspection of the mechanical systems, heating, electrical, plumbing. What is the condition of the roof? What does the inside look like? Are the walls all busted up? Is it a wet basement? So that issue has to be built in. Every now and then, a bidder at sheriff's sale can gain access before the sale to inspect the interior of the property, but that is the exception rather than the norm. So always be aware in bidding at sheriff's sale of the possibly foreseen and unforeseen factors, problems with the property, and issues. In addition, after the sale, one has to deal with the former owner who may be in possession. That may require an eviction or a short-term lease or use and occupancy agreement before you can get the former owner out. You may have gotten title to the property at sheriff's sale, but that doesn't give you absolute possession. You may have the right to possession, but you cannot simply use what we used to call self-help and literally or figuratively throw the former out or put his belongings on the curb. That will subject you, the new owner of the property, to federal and state penalties, both civil and criminal. Self-help is not permitted. At the same time, you have to deal with any bona fide tenants after the sheriff's sale. If the tenant had a month-to-month lease or some bona fide genuine written lease, they have to be honored. And the courts many times, even when there's been a month-to-month tenant, will give that tenant a certain leeway at a reasonable rental that has to be honored by the new owner of the property, you, the successful bidder at sheriff's sale, after you have taken title to the property. So that is a cost and an issue to bear in mind, that you might have to keep occupants in the property for a certain period after the sale.